Hi there, my name is Will and welcome back to a deep dive of workflow components. Today I'm going to walk you through the Retries property and how you can use this inside of your flows. Kestra provides task retry functionality. Put simply, the Retries property allows you to define how a flow or a task should retry in case it is failing. This allows you to add retry behavior to any failed task inside of your flows. Let's jump into how you would configure this to get it working. As you can see in my example here, we've got a simple log task that is going to output the task ID to the logs. We have a timeout here of 10 minutes so that it will not successfully run if it takes 10 minutes to execute. And we've also got the retry property here, which says the type is set to constant, the max attempts is 5, and the interval between these attempts is 15 minutes. Let's execute this and see what it does. We can see that it was successful and it didn't need to retry. We can see here as well on the right hand side how many attempts it took to execute as well. Helpful for being able to debug and understand exactly why. And this lets you then filter down for the different logs for each attempt, so you can understand why each attempt failed as well. In this next example, we have a shell command that is going to fail up to 4 times, and on the 5th attempt it's going to pass. So this is a really good way to be able to see the retries property in action. Now this task specifically has the retry set to constant, so it's going to constantly try and retry once it fails. Interval set to 0.25 seconds. It's going to take 5 attempts before it fails completely, and the max duration for each attempt is 1 minute. So if the shell command for some reason hangs, gets stuck, whatever reason, if it takes longer than a minute, it will automatically fail it. And it will also provide a warning on retry. Now let's execute this and see this in action. Now we can actually see here that the attempts are already adding up on the right hand side, and we can actually filter between them. And we can see that that last attempt was successful, but if we go between them, we can see that it failed with code error 1, again. And then when we go to the last one, it is successful, but it does fail with a warning. So you can see that even though it has successfully passed, the overall flow state has been set to warning because obviously something bizarre went on there, and it's best to have a look and understand why, especially if you're expecting it to pass first time. As we can see from this example, these are the different properties that you can use in the retry property. Type can also be changed to exponential and random if you want the retries to be a little bit more spaced out. However, in most cases, I imagine you will want to set it to constant so it retries straight away. It's also worth noting that the duration property here is again using the ISO 8601 format that we use in other places in Kestra. You can see a number of examples in our documentation. It's worth noting as well that if you want to, you can actually define these retry properties at the global level. You can set that inside of your Kestra configuration, so every task will have these same properties. You can also define retries at the flow level as well. So maybe a singular task will fail, but you don't necessarily know which one will fail. Instead of having to add them all to each task or setting them maybe using a task default, you can just set it for the entire flow altogether. So in this example here, we have 2 tasks that are going to just fail. There is a type here that allows us just to fail the task, and we've actually set the first one to allow the failure, so it will continue and let the second one execute as well. And we've said 3 attempts for execution. The behavior is the create a new execution, the type is set to constant, and the interval between them is 1 second. So what we're going to see is it's going to create a whole new execution every time it fails. Let's have a look at this in action. We'll see that that first task does fail, but it fails with a warning here. And then we can see that the second task also fails, but this time it fails completely. But what we can see though is the task itself was retried. And so if we go to executions, we'll actually see that the task was executed 3 times total before it failed completely. So really helpful if you want to be able to define that at the flow level as well. One other thing to mention is the difference between retry versus replay, as well as restart. When you execute a flow, on the overview page of the execution, you will be presented with replay and restart. As you can see here, replay will create a new separate execution from the beginning, almost like you pressing the execute button yourself. Restart, on the other hand, will restart the execution from the failed task, so it will use the exact same settings and properties that that one had. Retrials, on the other hand, will automatically rerun the same execution. If you do use the replay functionality, you can still track where that was triggered from. So if I click replay here, we can actually see here that it's going to execute this ID, and we'll be able to see that even though it's got a new ID, in overview, we can actually see that it was originally executed from this parent execution. So helpful for being able to track back and figure out where things started. It's also worth noting that you can also do replays from the task level. So if you click on the 3 dots on each of the tasks, we actually have the option to replay. So here I can replay just an individual task rather than the whole flow, and I can see that that executes as well. Restart's really useful because it allows you to only rerun the failed tasks. So any successful tasks, it will keep those. Let's say your first task was to make a HTTP request and get some data. You obviously don't need to keep making those requests, reduce the chance of hitting any rate limiting because you already have that data as an output in the execution. So this will restart just those failed tasks. So to summarize, between retries, replay, and restart, retries are automatic, whereas the other 2 are manual. Retries and restart do not create new executions. They will simply just rerun the existing execution. Retry, if it's set at the task level, will only retry that specific task, whereas restart will restart all of the failed tasks. Whereas replay, on the other hand, will create a new execution and start everything fresh. Hopefully you found that useful, and this will help you create a little bit more control to how your flows execute when they encounter failures. If you found this useful, let us know in the comments below how you're using retries, restarts, and replays in Kestra, and how they are helping you create even more powerful workflows.